قد أفلح المؤمنون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل Muhammad. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the previous part of our series, we went over the beginning of the Battle of Karbala. We went over how the Ansar, Salamullahi alayhim ajma'in, how they all fought bravely and valiantly to defend Imam al-Husayn. But when we last left off, all of the Ansar had been martyred. So today we will enter into the final final phase of the Battle of Karbala, and that is the death of the Talibiyin, the death of the relatives of Abu Abdullah who had come with him. And then after we go over the martyrdom of the Talibiyin, of Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhim, we will go over the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn himself. And before I begin, I just want to give a huge thanks to the brothers who helped me in compiling these sources, particularly Brother Nasser. I want to give a huge shout out to our editor and ask that all of you please make dua for him, make dua for me, as well as the brothers who have helped, who have aided in this research, and who have aided in bringing this series together. Allah is our witness. Our only goal here was to provide our Mu'min brothers and sisters with a historical analysis and an overview of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn's life as well as his martyrdom. And with that being said, we will begin. Virtually all of the historians who have written about the Battle of Karbala are in agreement that the first of Abi Talib, the first of Husayn's relatives to be martyred during the Battle of Karbala, was Sayyidina Ali al-Akbar, salamullahi alayh. And Ali al-Akbar, there is a bit of a difference of opinion between historians as to whether or not he is the eldest, whether he was the eldest or his other brother, Ali, his other brother who is also named Ali, who is of course Imam as-Sajjad, salamullahi alayh, whether he was the eldest. And so we conclude, and I think this is the strongest opinion, we going off of what Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani records in Maqtal al-Talibiyin. He records that Ali al-Akbar is recorded to have narrated a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh, as well as from Aisha. However, he does not mention the hadith. He explicitly says, I would mention these hadiths, but that is not my subject. I do not want to go off task. Because as we know, his subject for the book was to record the deaths of the important members of Abi Talib. So unfortunately, he did not preserve those hadiths for us. But this indicates that Ali al-Akbar, that Ali ibn al-Husayn salamullahi alayh, the son of Sayyida Layla, who was martyred in Karbala, this confirms that he is the eldest. Because as we know, Imam as-Sajjad salamullahi alayh was born 2 years before the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen salamullahi alayh. And this means he would be too young. He was 2 years old when his grandfather was martyred. It means he was far too young to narrate any hadith from him. So based off this fact, we conclude that Ali al-Akbar, salamullahi alayhi, he is in fact the eldest of the two. And so, regarding his biography, the basic facts regarding him, he is the son of al-Imam al-Husayn and a Sayyida Layla bint Abi Murra ibn Urwa ibn Mas'ud from Banu Thaqif. And her mother was Maymuna bint Abi Sufyan. And we covered her and her ancestry, her lineage in more depth in our video on her on the wives of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. Al-Baladhuri reports in Ansab al-Ashraf, volume 3, page 361, as well as Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani in Maqatil al-Talibiyin. Or I'm sorry, not page 361, it's volume 5, page 143 to page 144, as well as Abu al-Faraj in Kitab Maqatil al-Talibiyin on page 86. They both report the following. They report that Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, la'inahullah, once asked, who is the most deserving of this matter, meaning the Khilafah? So they said to him, you are. And he said, no, but rather Ali ibn al-Husayn. His mother is the daughter of Abi Murra ibn Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi. And her mother is the daughter of Abu Sufyan. In him, there is the courage of Banu Hashim, the hilm or forbearance of Banu Umayyah, and the cleverness of Banu Thaqif. And so we see here that because of his lineage, because his mother was from both Thaqafi and Umayyad ancestry, that Muawiyah was saying, he is worthy of the Khilafah based off of his lineage. Al-Baladari notes, however, after quoting this story, he notes that it has been, this is how it has been narrated. But then he says, وَثَبْتُ أَنَّ غَيْرَ مُعَاوِيَةَ قَالَ ذَلك. He says, but it is more reliable that this is a misquotation. It was not Muawiyah who said this, but someone else said this. And so al-Baladari, al-Tabari, and Abu al-Faraj, and we'll be quoting the narrative of al-Tabari. He reports in Tarikh al-Tabari, volume 19, page 150 to 151, he reports the following. And I want to clarify this part of the Maqtal here can be a tad bit confusing, because what we see here is that while Tabari narrated the most complete version of the death of Ali ibn al-Husayn, salamullahi alayh, Ali al-Akbar, we see that there are other parts of his Maqtal that were highlighted more by Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani. So they report that he came out chanting the following war poem. I am Ali ibn al-Husayn ibn Ali. By the house of Allah, we are with those with a better claim to the Prophet. Better than Shabath and Shemr the evil one. I'll strike you with the sword until it folds. Still even today I defend my father. By Allah, the son of an illegitimate son will not judge us. In Abu al-Faraj's version of the report, in his rendition, he adds the following detail. Or he reports the following detail. He reports that when Ali al-Akbar went out to fight, al-Husayn alayhi salam began to weep, and he said, "O Allah, be the witness against them, for a youth has come out against them who is the most similar in creation to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam." At-Tabari further reports that he declared these words several times, and the Kufans were afraid to kill him. He fought for a while and then returned to his father, telling him of his thirst. And this is, of course, recorded by Abu al-Faraj as well. So al-Husayn said to him, "Be patient, my beloved, for you will not pass tonight until the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam quenches your thirst with his cup." The reports further tell us that some then began to fire arrows at him, and one struck him in his mouth. Then a man by the name of Murra ibn Munqidh ibn al-Nu'man al-Abdi saw him, and he swore, "If I do not deprive his father of him, may the felonies of the Arabs come on me if he passes me doing the same as he has been doing." So as Ali ibn al-Husayn continued to attack them, Murra ibn al-Munqidh came forward and stabbed him. He was struck down, and the people fell upon him, cutting him with their swords. As he lay there being struck by his enemies, he called out, "My father, peace be upon you. This is my grandfather, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, saying, 'Be quick to come to us.'" And again, this is reported in Abu al-Faraj's rendition in Maqtal al-Talibiyin, page 115 to page 116. Returning to the report of al-Tabari, he reports on the authority of Humayd ibn Muslim, and this is also, I believe, Abu al-Faraj also quotes this with his chain to Humayd ibn Muslim. "On that day I heard al-Husayn saying, 'May Allah kill the people who killed you, my son. How courageous they are against the merciful Allah and in violating the inviolable kin of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. After you, the world needs nothing from me.'" Humayd further narrates, "Then I saw a woman like the rising sun come out hurrying. She was crying, 'My brother, my nephew.' I asked who she was and was told that it was Zainab bint Fatima, the daughter of Rasulullah. She came and threw herself on him. Al-Husayn went, took her by the hand, and then led her back to the tent. Then he went to his son, and his young men went to him, and he said, 'Carry your brother back.' So they carried him back and put him before the tent that they had been fighting in front of." The historical tradition now tells us that the next members of Al-Husayn's family to step forward were the descendants of Aqil and Ja'far, the sons of Abu Talib salamullahi alayh. So At-Tabari reports with his chain, and At-Tabari here in Tarikh al-Tabari volume 19, page 151 to 152, he lists them rapidly one after the other. He goes over them and lists who killed them, and we're going to show you that these reports are corroborated by Abu al-Faraj al-Isfahani. At-Tabari reports that Amr ibn al-Subay'i al-Saddal shot an arrow at Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil. And so Abdullah put his hand up to guard his brow, and the arrow struck his hand and penetrated through to his brow, and it fixed his hand to his forehead. He was not able to move his hand. Then another arrow was directed at him that split his heart in two. Tabari and Abu al-Faraj report, and Abu al-Faraj here is, we are quoting from Maqatil al-Talibiyin, page 95. and it continues page 95 to page 96 to page 97. He reports that Abdullah ibn Qutb al-Ta'i attacked Awn ibn Abdullah ibn Ja'far and killed him. They further report that Amr ibn Nahshal al-Tamimi attacked Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Ja'far ibn Abi Talib and killed him. They further report that Uthman ibn Khalid ibn Usayr al-Juhani and Bishr ibn Sawt al-Hamdani al-Qaba'i launched themselves against Abdul Rahman ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib and killed him. And lastly, they report that Abdullah ibn Urwa al-Khathami shot at Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, and killed him. At Ja'far ibn Aqil ibn Abi Talib, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, and killed him. And so we see that in rapid succession, now that the Ansar are gone, the relatives of Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi, they are surrounded and they are killed one by one in front of the Imam. The historians further narrate to us the report of the martyrdom of al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan salamullahi alayhi, the son of Imam al-Mujtaba. And so this is reported by al-Baladhri, al-Tabari, and Abu al-Faraj, and we will quote the version of al-Tabari since Abu al-Faraj's report is identical. They both quote on the authority of Humayd ibn Muslim, who says, "A young lad came out against us. His face was young like the first splinter of the moon, and there was a sword in his hand. He was wearing a shirt and a waistcloth and a pair of sandals, one of whose straps was broken. As I remember, it was the left. Amr ibn Sa'd ibn Nufayl al-Azdi said to me, 'By Allah, let me attack him.' I said, 'Praise be to Allah. What do you want to do that for? Is it not enough for you that these people who you see have surrounded them should do the killing?' But he insisted, 'By Allah, let me attack him.' So he rushed against him and did not turn back until he had struck his head with his sword. The young lad fell face downward as he called out, 'O my uncle.' Al-Husayn showed himself just as the hawk shows itself. He launched into attack like a raging lion and struck Amr ibn Sa'd ibn Nufayl with his sword. That man tried to fend off the blow with his arm, but his arm was cut from the elbow. He gave a great shriek. As al-Husayn turned away from him, the cavalry of the Kufans attacked in order to save Amr ibn Sa'd ibn Nufayl from al-Husayn. Their horses collided against Amr with their chests, their hoofs kicked out, and they galloped with their riders over him so that they trampled him to death. The dust fell, and there was al-Husayn standing by the head of the young lad, and the lad had his feet stretched out on the ground. And al-Husayn was saying, 'May the people who killed you perish. For the one who will oppose them on the day of resurrection will be, on your behalf, will be your grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By Allah, it is hard on your uncle that you called him and he did not answer you, or rather he answered, but your cry did not help you. For by Allah, those who killed his relatives are many, but those who help him are few.'" Humayd continues, "Then al-Imam al-Husayn carried him," and he describes it in heartbreaking detail. He says, "It is just as if I can see the 2 feet of the boy leaving tracks in the ground while al-Husayn held his breast close to his own. I asked myself what he would do with him. He brought him and put him with his son Ali ibn al-Husayn and the other members of his family who had been slain. I asked about that boy and was told that he was al-Qasim ibn al-Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib." The next point that we will go over is a very, very interesting one, and it is very hard for me to do an analysis of this next report, simply because the matter we are dealing with is so sensitive and is so heartbreaking, and it is a calamity the likes of which perhaps the Ahlul Bayt had only suffered once before. When al-Muhsin salamullahi alayhi was killed, his life was ended before he was born. And so that is, of course, the martyrdom of Abdullah al-Radhi, the infant son of al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. So the issue that I wish to discuss is the age of Abdullah al-Radhi. And the reason why is because some people will ask the question, why on earth did al-Husayn have an infant baby with him? As in, we know, for example, that Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas salamullahi alayhi, his son Ubaydullah, he left that infant with his mother, with the child's grandmother al-Banin. Why would al-Husayn bring an infant baby all the way out here to Karbala with him, to Iraq? Well, it would make more sense that he would leave the baby in Medina. So in order to answer this question, we will look at one of the most early primary sources that we have regarding the martyrdom of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi. And that is a book by the name of Tasmiyat Man Qutila Ma al-Husayn, which is a book that if we even put it against Abu Mikhnaf, we could even argue that it's older than Abi Mikhnaf. It is a near contemporary source to the martyrdom of al-Imam al-Husayn salamullahi alayhi, and it was written by a man by the name of Fudayl ibn Zubair ibn Umar ibn Dirham al-Kufi al-Asadi. This is a man from Bani Asad, and he reports in this book of his that the mother of this young baby was, of course, Sayyidah Rabab bint Imru al-Qais al-Kalbiyya, whose biography we have gone over. But he reports that this child was born on the day of the battle, which is a very, very shocking fact. And I remember when I first read this, at first I refused to believe it. I'm like, this does not make any sense. But then I realized I'm dealing with a primary source here. And on top of that, it is corroborated by al-Yaqubi in his Tarikh. So they both report, and al-Yaqubi is also an early Shia historian, they report that Abdullah was born during the battle. And this makes perfect sense. This makes sense as to why the child would be there at Karbala, and it also makes sense as to why they brought him to al-Husayn in the first place, is that they wanted him to embrace his baby boy one last time. And so the report tells us in Tasmiyat man qutila ma al-Husayn, salamullahi alayhi, and we are quoting this from page 68, he reports the following. He says that he was brought to the Imam while he was sitting down, and he put his tongue in his mouth and named him Abdullah. And while he was doing so, Harmal ibn Kahil al-Asadi la'inahullah shot an arrow at the infant, and the arrow struck his neck, and thus he was martyred. So al-Husayn took his blood and threw it towards the sky, and not a single drop fell. Al-Imam al-Baqir is reported to have said, if a drop fell back down to the earth, the punishment would have come down as well. Al-Yaqubi, in his rendition of the report, in Tarikh al-Yaqubi, volume 2, page 170 to 171, and again, this is a very summarized version of the Maqtal of Abu Abdullah, which is why we have not relied on it up until now. But he quotes something that is very important here. He says that al-Husayn alayhi salam, when he saw that his young child had been slain in his hands, he said the following. He said, by Allah, you are more honorable upon Allah than the she-camel, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam is more honorable upon Allah than Salih alayhi salam. Al-Baladri, al-Tabari, and Abu al-Faraj report, and this is found in Tarikh al-Tabari in volume 19, page 154. They report that Uqba ibn Bashir al-Asadi said, Aba Ja'far Muhammad ibn Ali ibn al-Husayn, Imam al-Baqir, said to me that the blood of his family was on the hands of us Banu Asad. So I said to him, is it my fault? May Allah have mercy on you? Then I asked him what our guilt was. So he answered, Al-Husayn was brought his young child, and he was on his knee. Then one of you, Banu Asad, shot an arrow that slaughtered the child. Al-Husayn caught the blood in his hand, and when the palm of his blood was full, he poured the blood onto the ground and said, O Lord, if it be that you have kept the help of heaven from us, then let it be because your purpose is better than immediate help. Take vengeance for us upon these oppressors. They further report that Abdullah ibn Uqba al-Ghanawi shot an arrow at Abu Bakr ibn al-Hasan ibn Ali and killed him. The historians now narrate to us the martyrdom of the sons of Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayh and al-Banin. And the historians are in a near consensus that the last of al-Husayn's defenders, the very last of them to be martyred, were the sons of al-Banin salamullahi alayha. So we are quoting the narrative of al-Tabari, and this can be found in his Tarikh in volume 19, page 155. They report that al-Abbas ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi at this point in the battle said to his brothers Abdullah, Ja'far, and Uthman, and he says, my brothers through my mother, go forward so that I may see that you have remained true to Allah and His Messenger, for you have no children to defend. And so Abdullah ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi advanced and fought fiercely. He exchanged blows with Hanit ibn Shabib al-Hadrami, and Hanit killed him. After him, Ja'far went forward. Ja'far ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib went forward, and Hanit also killed him. Khawli ibn Yazid al-Asbahi la'inahullah came forward and fought Uthman, who had taken the place of his brother Ja'far. And he fired an arrow at him, and that brought him down. A man from Banu Darim attacked Uthman salamullahi alayhi while he was down and cut off his head. Muhammad ibn Ali was killed by a man from Banu Aban ibn Darim. And this is not Muhammad ibn Ali Muhammad al-Hanafiya. This is Muhammad ibn Ali, who is also called Muhammad ibn Ali al-Asghar. And I think he may have another kunya which he is known by. As for al-Abbas ibn Ali salamullahi alayh, He was the last son of Ali and al-Banin to be martyred, and we have covered his martyrdom in depth in his own biography. Abil Faraj, rahimahullah, reports in his Maqtal al-Talibin, page 89 to 90. He reports the following, and he has a chain to Imam al-Sadiq. Imam al-Sadiq salamullahi alayhi narrates that the mother of these four martyred brothers, al-Banin salamullahi alayha, used to go to al-Baqi' and lament for her sons with the most sorrowful and heart-wrenching elegy. People would gather around her to listen, and even Marwan ibn al-Hakam la'inahullah would be among those who attended, and he would continue to listen to her lamentation, and he too would weep. And so we see that al-Banin salamullahi alayha, her four sons who are buried in Karbala, she would go to Baqi' and she would mourn them in Medina.